Hi, I'm ready to talk about the Australia-New Zealand series. Ideally, I'll be discussing this after the Australia-South Africa series had finished, but seeing as this series actually kicks off really soon, 1st of December, I thought I should get into it now, so we have some time to digest it, looking into it. New Zealand are actually the last team for me to talk about, last of the major teams for me to talk about, but I haven't yet talked about, so we'll get into them first. Um, New Zealand have not played a lot of cricket recently. They played in January, and then the last test they played was in Zimbabwe. A quick little aside about Zimbabwe, they're actually playing pretty well. They challenged Pakistan, had a first innings lead, I think, against Pakistan in a test match. They've only played in Zimbabwe so far, about, I think it's 5 test matches there, and beat Bangladesh, which I think was an interesting result. I really expected Bangladesh to win that series. Very big step back for Bangladeshi cricket, that one. So New Zealand only beat them by 34 runs, which, read that how you will. As I say, it's certainly a trend of Zimbabwe playing a lot better than perhaps we thought. Um, I mean, Zimbabwe, I think, had 100 runs to get, 107, something like that, to get in the last session with 7 wickets in hand. They decided to go for it and came up a little bit short. So that was a genuine 15-session test match that New Zealand lucky to get away from. Zimbabwe's good player side, particularly Brendan Taylor, that's obviously not a good sign for New Zealand. New Zealand have a sort of a veneer of respectability that, say, the West Indies don't have. You know, those two teams are pretty similar in terms of their competitiveness. And New Zealand, in New Zealand, is a pretty good team. I mean, that's the best place in the world to bowl, and they take advantage of that. They've had a relatively good stable of young pace bowlers or pace bowlers to go through. The pace bowler that gets quite a bit of attention has been sort of the most consistent one. Tuffy's been around for quite some time now, but Chris Martin. Chris Martin actually won the Cricketer of the Year. I think it was for this year, whether it was this year or last year, I'm not sure. Chris Martin bats at 2.4, and now look, I like Chris Martin. I actually think Chris Martin in the right conditions is a dangerous bowler. He's got a little bit of pace, gets good movement, gets batsmen to drive, particularly with a new ball. Good new ball bowler. But Chris Martin averages 2.47 in Test match cricket. That's insanely bad, especially for a batsman or for a guy who's played so much Test cricket. That it hasn't improved at all. 2.47 is insanely low. I mean, 7, 8, 9, we consider those irrelevant batsmen. Those half as good as that. He's nearly 37. He averages 40.12 on the road, 2.5 wickets a match on the road. His last 9 tests, he's taken 2.89 wickets a match at 43.88. That guy was their Cricketer of the Year. You almost couldn't put together a less valuable cricketer. Averaging 2.47 batting average, 37. He's old pace bowler for that matter. Useless away from New Zealand, and bad recently. So that guy was their best cricketer of the year. That's the sort of thing that worries me about New Zealand. They've not won a test against a major test nation in 2 years. That's 9 tests. They've drawn 4 and lost 5. I mentioned they've only played once since January this year, and that wasn't a very convincing performance, albeit in Africa. They haven't won a road test against a major test nation. They took the top 8, so the West Indies up, since June 2002. We talk again. A lot is made of West Indies playing poor in the road, but they beat South Africa in 2007, I think it was, away from home. And we're doing quite well against the Indians. But New Zealand haven't won against a major test team since June 2002. That's 25 matches. They've lost 15 of them. In 6 of those losses, they've taken 1 wicket or less in the opponent's second innings, and they've also suffered a 213-run loss. So they're not a competitive team away from home, and that's a theme I think that will dominate this series, is that New Zealand is not a very good team on the road. Ross Taylor's captaining them now, so they've had some transition with the captaincy issues. Obviously, they missed Stephen Fleming, and that he's sort of technical now since Mo Kamara's job to keep them afloat in many games. So with that record, you would sort of have rocks in your head to really imagine that they can make a serious impact on the series, even against a struggling Australian team. They do have one bright spot. Well, they might have a few bright spots. One thing is that New Zealand are trying to bring in new young players, which is fair enough. And as I say, the fast bowling stocks normally are well kept, so they should be able to find some pace bowling options. One thing that really excites them is Kane Williamson, very young guy, 19. He's had a bright start to his Test career, averaging 37.81, not bad for a 19-year-old. He's got a century already in his first 11 innings, got 4 scores. 4 scores is particularly good in 11 innings from a young kid. So they think he's the next Martin Crowe. If that's the case, that's huge. That's exactly what New Zealand need. They've lacked any batting power at all, really. Ross Taylor tries admirably. He's a good player. He's better than his numbers suggest in a bad batting card. But averages 40, I think. Kane Williamson, if they can have Kane Williams and Ross Taylor, and they can get that depth back in the card, they've traditionally had a lot of, they bat 7 or 8 or 9 deep. Then with guys like James Franklin and Vittori's been a great batsman actually for his position. They can use that to build defensible scores, but generally they're a terrible batting team, and I suspect that Australia will be able to roll them at least once for less than 100 or less than 150. As for the Australians, obviously they're playing South Africa at the moment. South Africa's a much better team than New Zealand and Australia. The second test is still in limbo, but South Africa probably have wrestled the momentum back from Australia starting day 3. Ponting, you've heard me tell you the Ponting thing. Got to go. This is a great time to bring you guys in. Brian Coverdale, I think it is, on Quick Info, talks about, it's a good point, about the fact that Australia's got a chance to put young players in position to succeed in playing New Zealand, which is obviously what they want. There's no reason you can't try David Warner. I'm as against anyone as 2020 cricket, but the guy has a good first-class record, and no problem giving him a shot. He's got a good pull shot, left-handed, which helps. So, give him a shot. It's better than Ponting. It's better than just trying a 37-year-old guy. Why do you think this is going to get me better? As I say, he might score a century in the next innings. It's certainly possible. This is cricket. Nature of the game is unpredictable, but he's not performing, not remotely performing. And make way, Khawaja, maybe Warner, Sean Marsh playing well. Obviously, he's had an injury issue, but let's try things. Whether they play Johnson or not is up in the air. I think Johnson's spot should be a little bit more secure, as badly as he's played. Left arm is a big plus. I don't know any other left arm pace bowlers in Australia that are really knocking on the door. And considering Australia are toying with the 4-man pace attack, and you're probably expecting me to say, and you're going to be right, that they should go with the 4-man pace attack, because Nathan Lyon not really working out. Bowled 3 overs in that first test. 3 overs. Number 11 bowled 3 overs in a test match that you lost. So, look, Nathan Lyon, I've said my piece on that. Averaging over 40 at the moment. If anything, I imagine that will get worse. He's taken 2 batsmen's wickets since the first test he played. That's over the last 3 or 4 tests. 4 tests, 3.5 tests. He's taken 2 professional batsmen he's got now. So I'm not really going to get too much into the statistical side of things for Australia. We know how they're playing. We've seen them bat quite a bit now and bowl quite a bit. The 47 thing, just to respond to that, obviously not good. Those things do happen. But they've happened a lot to Australia. Australia's been dismissed for under 100. I think I heard it was 3 times in the last 12 tests. Once was against Pakistan in Lords, and then once in the Ashes to England. I think they also were bundled out for less than 100 at the SCG, and now less than 100 here. So while yes, these things do happen, and you can turn a blind eye to it every now and then, it's happened. Well, that's 4 times I've counted. It's a very agricultural count. I'm not saying this is perfect, and please feel free to look it up. But that's happening too often, and that's just because they have unstable set of openers, particularly Hughes. I know Hughes played well in the last innings, but I'm still not convinced at all. But you sort of at some point you've sort of invested so much, you may as well keep going with it. Watson's flailing a little up there. Watson's role is undetermined as ever. He's a very good player, but what do you do with him? The bowling thing has now become more of an issue as we thought it might. Just a lack of solid batting options. Haddon's in the press here. What's sort of weird is Haddon's getting a lot of, should they keep Haddon? Haddon's the least of their worries. I know that Haddon hasn't been batting that great, but he batted great in the Ashes, for instance. He's obviously in the top 3 batting keepers in the world. Him, Pryor, and I think Haddon's better than Dhoni. So he's the 2nd best keeper in the world on that score. He's not costing games with his gloves. It's ludicrous to suggest he is. So Haddon's not a concern. Johnson's batting is another thing. Batting, left arm, is sort of the things that keep him hanging around. I understand the criticisms, but they've got batting depth. They should be avoiding these issues. Problems for Australia, but not big enough problems to disrupt this test series. It's a 2-test series. Australia played a lot of cricket recently. New Zealand haven't. New Zealand come in with question marks. They just don't have the talent, frankly. Particularly in the batting card, I think Australia's bowlers will be really looking forward to this opportunity to bounce back and take some wickets. The bowling attack, broadly speaking, has looked pretty good over the last few test matches. They did well against Sri Lanka, although Sri Lanka played terribly against Pakistan, and they're not looking at the opponents they did 6 months ago. But and looked quite good against South Africa. Bowled South Africa for 97, don't forget. So bowling attack looks quite good if it's fit. So I suspect Australia will win the series 2-0. Normally they're very good coming at home. And we'll see what happens for the India series, which I'll be talking about actually next week. A lot of cricket coming up soon, so I'll be looking into all of it. Thanks for looking. Thanks, guys. Bye.